Game of Thrones was renowned for its epic battle scenes, but the writers took the wrong lesson from the most epic one of them all and ended up ruining the show because of it. The thrilling battle sequences we've seen in shows like Andor and The Last of Us owe a debt to the jaw-dropping action set pieces of Game of Thrones, but these shows need more than just spectacle. Very few TV shows have had as astounding a downfall as Game of Thrones had. It's not uncommon for a series to dip in quality as it gets past its heyday into its later seasons. It happens all the time with sitcoms, but Game of Thrones' fall from grace wasn't just a dip in quality, it was an unprecedented nosedive. Throughout the first few seasons of Game of Thrones, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss were universally praised as the best adapters in Hollywood. They took the virtually unfilmable novels of George R.R. Martin and turned them into a blockbuster TV show. But Martin's book series was unfinished, and while Benioff and Weiss ran out of source material to adapt, they quickly began to flounder. There's a clear watershed moment when Game of Thrones stops adapting fully fleshed-out novels and starts adapting half-baked story outlines, and it's the moment that it goes from a TV masterpiece to a bitter disappointment. But if we're going to pinpoint the exact moment that marked the end of an era, it has to be the Hard Home attack sequence. Game of Thrones learned the wrong lessons from Hard Home. Season 5, Episode 8, Hard Home, has been hailed as one of Game of Thrones' all-time greatest episodes. It's an action-packed thrill ride, a visual feast for the eyes, and a major stepping stone in the overall plot. There's nothing wrong with the episode itself, but looking back on it, it was clearly the beginning of the end for Game of Thrones. This episode has a lot of big turning points for the characters. Tyrion and Daenerys meet for the first time, Cersei languishes in her cell, and Sansa learns from Theon that Bran and Rickon are still alive. But the centerpiece of the episode is, of course, its battle sequence. It's that battle sequence that led to the show's downfall. In the episode, Jon Snow leads the Night's Watch and the Free Folk in a rare joint effort against the army of the dead at Hard Home. The bulk of the action sees Jon's forces battling it out with the undead soldiers of the Night King. It's truly a sight to behold, but the writers took the wrong lessons from its success. In the book that Season 5 is based on, A Dance with Dragons, Martin mentions this battle, but he doesn't make it a major plot point like the show does. For Benioff and Weiss, this was the perfect opportunity to inject some action into the season as it headed into its endgame, and it served its purpose well. The final seasons of Game of Thrones favored spectacle over story. Hard Home was a massive hit on its initial release. It was enjoyed by millions of viewers, it was universally acclaimed by critics, and it became the single most popular episode of the series to date according to fan ratings. This success was attributed to the battle scene, which was said to rival the best battle scenes from the big screen. Benioff and Weiss took this to mean that all their audience wanted to see was battle scenes. In the final season of Game of Thrones, story and character development took a backseat in favor of big, bold, cinematic spectacle. But without the storytelling and character work to back it up, that spectacle feels empty and meaningless. What made Hard Home so successful was that it paid off all the storytelling that had been carefully building to it, and audiences genuinely cared about the people fighting on the battlefield. It wasn't just the battle itself, it was all the work that went into making the battle so impactful. In the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones, a lot more airtime was given to action spectacle than fleshing out the characters and their choices. Daenerys' sudden turn to mass murder had no build-up or context whatsoever, it came completely out of nowhere. The writers should have spent more time contextualizing that decision and less time on action sequences. Game of Thrones' best moments were not on the battlefield. From the Battle of the Bastards to the Battle of Blackwater Bay, Game of Thrones had plenty of awesome battle sequences. But the show's greatest moments didn't take place on the battlefield, they were more intimate moments between characters we cared about. Tyrion's final showdown with Tywin, Cersei's public shaming, Daenerys' rebirth as the Mother of Dragons. Even the more memorable moments of violence, like the execution of Ned Stark or the notorious Red Wedding, came from a more personal place than any battle scene. The battle scenes were great, but they were far from the best part of Game of Thrones, and far from the main reason why audiences loved the show so much. Hard Home makes The Long Night even more disappointing. Hard Home, being such a glorious spectacle, ended up being a disservice to Game of Thrones' overall story. The massacre at Hard Home is supposed to just be a preamble to the Battle of Winterfell depicted in Season 8, Episode 3, The Long Night. But the Hard Home attack ended up being much more exciting, and well-lit, than The Long Night itself.